It's hard to talk about this. It's been years, but it still feels like it happened yesterday. The moment I found out I was pregnant, I thought it was the beginning of everything I ever wanted. But it was the end. The end of the man I thought I knew, the life I thought we were building. The truth is, he was hiding something from me. And my pregnancy was the one thing that could bring it all crashing down. My name is Melissa. I was 33 when my life fell apart. I was with Ethan. We'd been together for 5 years. I loved him completely. I trusted him. I'm a thoughtful person. I don't jump into things. I believed our relationship was stable, that it was real. We were a team. Ethan was 36. He was the most charming person I'd ever met. Everyone liked him. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world. He was supportive, or at least he seemed to be. He always encouraged me, always had the right thing to say when I was feeling down. We talked about everything, or so I thought. We talked about getting married, about the kind of house we wanted one day. We talked about having kids. It was all part of the plan. Our plan. I wanted a family more than anything. I truly believed I was building one with the right person. There were no red flags, not any that I could see anyway. Looking back, he was always very careful with what he shared. He'd tell me stories about his work, about his friends. He'd share just enough to seem open and honest. But whenever I asked about his past, about his family, he would get vague. He'd give me a short, simple answer and then immediately change the topic. He'd ask me about my day or suggest we go out to eat or just pull me in for a hug. And it always worked. I'd forget my question. I felt loved, not shut out. I just assumed he had a difficult childhood and didn't like talking about it. I respected that. I didn't push. I trusted his version of his life, the version he presented to me. Our relationship felt exclusive. It felt honest. It was the foundation of my entire world. We weren't careless about pregnancy. It was a decision. We had reached a point where we agreed that if it happened, it would be a wonderful thing. So when I took that test, I wasn't scared. I was excited. I saw the 2 lines appear and my heart just soared. It was real. It was happening. Our future was starting right now. I couldn't wait to tell him. I imagined the moment over and over. I thought he would pick me up, spin me around. I thought we would cry together. I planned how I would tell him. I put the little test in a box. It felt like the most precious object in the world. That evening I gave it to him. He opened it. He looked at the test, and then he looked at me. He smiled, a small, calm smile. He stood up and hugged me. He held me for a long time. He told me it was great news. But his reaction felt off. It was quiet. It was controlled. There was no explosion of joy. There was just this strange, heavy calm. I felt a tiny flicker of disappointment, but I pushed it down immediately. I told myself he was just in shock, that it was big news and he was processing it. Men are different, I told myself. He's just being logical. I made excuses for him. I wanted it to be perfect, so I decided it was. That night, I fell asleep dreaming of our baby. I felt so happy, so secure. I didn't know that for Ethan, it wasn't the beginning of a dream. It was the beginning of a nightmare. The distance started almost immediately. It wasn't obvious at first. It was subtle. He was just a little quieter, a little less present. He'd be in the same room, but his mind was somewhere else. I could feel it. I'd be talking about baby names or looking at things for the nursery, and he would nod and smile, but his eyes were empty. He stopped asking about my day. He stopped initiating conversations. I tried to talk to him about it. I'd ask if he was okay, if he was worried about money or work. He would always say everything was fine. He'd insist he was happy, just tired. He was a master at avoiding direct answers. He could make you feel like you were the one being unreasonable for even asking. I started to feel a little crazy. I'd think, am I imagining this? Am I being too sensitive because I'm pregnant? But the feeling wouldn't go away, this growing sense of unease. He started working late more often. He'd have to go into the office on weekends. Before, he always texted me. He'd let me know if he was running late. Now, there was just silence. I'd call him, and it would go straight to voicemail. Hours later, he'd come home and say his phone died or he was stuck in a meeting. The excuses were always plausible, just plausible enough to make me doubt myself. I felt so alone. I was supposed to be sharing this journey with him, but I felt like I was doing it by myself. The joy I'd felt at the beginning started to fade. It was replaced by a constant low-level anxiety. I tried to bring up our future again. I'd ask about our plans to get married, especially now with the baby on the way. He'd brush it off. He'd say we had plenty of time for that we should focus on the pregnancy first. It was another one of his non-answers. It didn't mean no, but it didn't mean yes either. It just meant nothing. It was like trying to hold on to smoke. I started noticing other small things. Inconsistencies. He mentioned a work trip to a conference in another city. A few days later, a friend of ours mentioned seeing him downtown on one of those same days. When I asked him about it, he got defensive. He said my friend must have been mistaken. He was so convincing that I actually apologized for questioning him. I felt ashamed. I felt like a suspicious, nagging partner. That wasn't who I wanted to be. So I tried harder. I tried to be more understanding, more patient. I told myself the pressure of becoming a father was just getting to him. I focused on my pregnancy. I went to doctor's appointments. He came to the first one, the one where we heard the heartbeat. He held my hand. He even had tears in his eyes. For a moment, I thought, okay, it's all in my head. He's here. He cares. But after that, he always had an excuse for why he couldn't make it to the next appointment. A last-minute meeting, a deadline he couldn't miss. I started going alone. I'd sit in the waiting room, surrounded by other couples. They'd be holding hands, talking, looking at ultrasound pictures together, and I would just sit there by myself. The loneliness was suffocating. My friends started to notice a change in him too. They'd ask me if everything was okay between us. They said Ethan seemed stressed, distant. I would defend him. I'd say he was just worried about being a good dad. I was still protecting him. I was protecting the image of the life I thought we had. The information started coming to me indirectly. That's what hurt the most. I got a piece of mail one day. It was addressed to Ethan, but from a law firm I didn't recognize. Normally, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. But with everything else, my curiosity got the better of me. I know I shouldn't have, but I opened it. It wasn't a lawsuit or anything dramatic. It was just a standard letter. But it was about a property I had never heard of. It was a deed for a house in a town about an hour away. It had his name on it, just his. I felt my stomach drop. We had been looking at houses together for us, for our family. Why would he have another property that he never mentioned? I confronted him with the letter that night. I tried to be calm. I just asked him what it was. He looked at the paper, and for a split second, I saw panic in his eyes. Pure, unfiltered panic. Then it was gone. The mask was back on. He told me it was an investment property, something he'd bought a long time ago, with some money he'd inherited. He said he didn't tell me because it was complicated, and he didn't want to bore me with the details. He made it sound like he was doing me a favor by keeping it from me. And the worst part is I almost believed him. I wanted to believe him so badly. But the lie didn't feel right. The panic I saw in his eyes, that was real. The calm explanation that followed was not. That was the first time I knew, with certainty, that he was actively lying to me. It wasn't just avoidance anymore. It was a deliberate deception. The trust I had in him, that solid foundation, started to crack. It wasn't broken yet, but I could feel the fissures spreading. I started to pay more attention. I stopped making excuses. His phone, which used to be left lying around anywhere, was now always with him. It was always face down, or in his pocket. One evening he was in the shower. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. I didn't pick it up. I just glanced at the screen. It was a text message. The preview just showed a name I didn't recognize. A woman's name. And the message said, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. The kids miss you." Kids, plural. I just stared at the screen. My blood ran cold. It couldn't be. It had to be a mistake. A cousin, a family friend. But the name wasn't his last name. And the tone, it wasn't casual. I felt sick. When he came out of the shower, I didn't say anything. I couldn't. What would I even say? That I spied on his phone? He would just deny it. He would have a perfectly reasonable explanation. He would turn it around and make me the bad guy. I knew it. So I stayed quiet. But that night, I didn't sleep at all. I just lay there, next to him, feeling like I was next to a complete stranger. The image of that text message was burned into my mind. The kids miss you. Who were they? Who was she? My mind was racing, trying to put up the pieces together. The secret house, the constant work trips, the distance. It was all starting to form a picture, and it was a picture I did not want to see. I realized I didn't know this man at all. The man I loved, the man whose baby I was carrying, he didn't exist. He was a character Ethan was playing, and the performance was starting to fall apart. The turning point came a week later. It wasn't some dramatic confrontation. It was quiet and devastating. He had told me he was going on another overnight work trip, a big presentation in a different state. I felt that familiar dread, but I just nodded. I helped him pack his bag. I kissed him goodbye. As he walked out the door, I felt an impulse I couldn't ignore. His laptop was still on the table. He usually took it everywhere. He must have forgotten it in his haste. For a few minutes, I just stared at it. I knew that crossing this line would change everything. There was no going back. My hands were shaking, but I opened it. It was password protected, of course. I tried all the usual things. My birthday, his birthday, our anniversary. Nothing worked. Then I remembered something he'd said once, a long time ago. He joked about his first pet, a dog named Buster. It was a random detail, something he'd shared in one of his rare, unguarded moments. I typed it in. It opened. I felt a wave of nausea. I was in. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just started clicking. Emails, documents. Then I found a folder. It was just labeled personal. I clicked on it. Inside were hundreds of photos. The first few were of him, alone, on vacation. Then I saw her. The woman from the pictures was beautiful. She was smiling, and then I saw the kids, a boy and a girl. They looked about 5 and 7. They were holding his hands. They were all on a beach laughing. It wasn't a work trip. It was a family vacation. There were pictures of Christmases, of birthdays, of them in a backyard with a swing set. The backyard of the house, from the deed. I recognized the shape of the windows from a picture online I had found after I got that letter. He wasn't just a man with a secret house. He had a whole other life, a whole other family. He had a wife. He had children. I just sat there, clicking through the photos one after another. My mind couldn't process it. This wasn't just a secret. This was a complete fabrication. Our entire relationship, our 5 years together, was a lie. I wasn't his future. I was his affair. And the baby. My baby was a complication he never planned for. The shock was so immense, I couldn't even cry. I felt nothing. It was like my body had just shut down. All the little inconsistencies, the lies, the distance, it all made perfect, horrible sense now. He wasn't stressed about becoming a father. He was terrified of his 2 lives colliding. My pregnancy wasn't a joyous event for him. It was a threat. It was the loose thread that was going to unravel his entire, carefully constructed world. I closed the laptop. All the love I felt for him, all the trust, it just evaporated. It was gone. In its place was a cold, hard clarity. I stopped trying to justify his behavior. I stopped making excuses. The man I loved didn't exist. He was a ghost. A story he told me to get what he wanted, and I had believed him. My focus shifted instantly. It was no longer about us. It was no longer about saving the relationship. It was about me, and it was about my child. My first thought was safety. Not physical safety, but emotional. I had to get away from him. I had to protect myself and my baby from this lie. I stood up from the table. I felt strangely calm. The shock had given way to a kind of numb resolve. I walked into our bedroom. My bedroom. I took a suitcase from the closet and started packing. I didn't take much. Just my clothes, my personal things. I left everything he had ever given me. I moved through the apartment like a robot. I didn't think. I just did. Every object I touched felt tainted. The photos of us on the wall felt like a mockery. I took them down, one by one, and put them face down on the floor. I wrote him a note. It was very short. I just wrote, "I know." That was it. I put it on top of the closed laptop. I didn't want a confrontation. I didn't want to hear more lies. I didn't want his fake apologies or his desperate excuses. There was nothing left to say. The pictures had said it all. I called a taxi. While I waited, I sat on the floor of the living room, in the middle of the life he had built for us. It felt like a stage set. It wasn't real. When the taxi arrived, I walked out and I didn't look back. I went to a hotel. I needed a neutral space, somewhere that held no memories. I turned off my phone. I knew he would be calling. I knew he would be panicking when he got home and found me gone, but I couldn't face it. Not yet. That night, alone in the impersonal hotel room, the numbness finally wore off, and the pain hit me. It was a physical pain. My whole body ached with it. I curled up in the bed and just sobbed. I cried for the man I thought I knew. I cried for the future I thought I was going to have. I cried for my baby who was going to be born into this mess. Most of all, I cried for my own stupidity. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed it? The signs were all there. I had just refused to see them. I had chosen the beautiful illusion over the ugly truth. The next morning, I woke up feeling empty. The grief was still there, but underneath it, something else was growing. Anger, a deep, cold anger. At him for his betrayal, and at myself for being so trusting. I knew I couldn't stay in that hotel forever. I had to make a plan. I turned my phone back on. It was flooded with missed calls and texts from him. "Melissa, where are you? Please call me. We need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. A misunderstanding." He thought he could explain away a wife and 2 children. The arrogance of it was breathtaking. I didn't reply. Instead, I called my sister. I hadn't told anyone what was going on. I had been too ashamed. But I couldn't do this alone anymore. When she answered, I just broke down. I told her everything. The pregnancy, the distance, the laptop, the photos. She didn't say, "I told you so." Even though she had never been Ethan's biggest fan, she just listened. And when I was done, she just said, "I'm coming to get you." An hour later, she was at the hotel. Seeing her was the first time I felt a glimmer of hope. I moved in with her. Her small apartment became my sanctuary. The days that followed were a blur. I was just going through the motions. Eating, sleeping, trying to process the wreckage of my life. Ethan didn't give up. He kept calling, texting. He even showed up at my sister's apartment once. She met him at the door and told him to leave, that I didn't want to see him. I listened from the other room, my heart pounding. I heard him trying to explain, his voice full of that fake sincerity I now knew so well. He finally left. After that, the calls and texts became less frequent. I think he was realizing that I wasn't going to just forgive him. I wasn't going to be the quiet little secret that he could manage. The pregnancy had changed the stakes. I hired a lawyer. I knew I had to. I needed to understand my rights and my child's rights. My lawyer was a no-nonsense woman who had seen it all. She laid out the facts for me. It was going to be complicated. The trust was gone, completely shattered. There was no decision to be made about the relationship. It was over. That was a fact, not a choice. My focus was now entirely on the baby, this innocent life that was caught in the middle of this disaster. I started to reassess everything. What kind of life did I want for my child? What kind of mother did I want to be? I knew one thing for sure. I wanted a life built on honesty. No more secrets, no more illusions. I realized that the love I had for Ethan wasn't real love. It was love for a character he had created, a character designed to trap me. Love doesn't survive when the truth arrives this late. It doesn't heal, it just dies. The hardest part was accepting that the man I was grieving had never actually existed. I had to separate the Ethan I thought I knew from the Ethan who was a stranger with a secret family. My lawyer started the legal process. It was ugly. His lawyer sent letters. They tried to paint me as unstable. They tried to question the timeline of our relationship. It was an attempt to intimidate me, to control the narrative. But I had the truth on my side, and for the first time in a long time, I felt strong. I had my sister. I had my friends, who rallied around me once they knew the truth. I wasn't alone anymore. I started going to therapy. I needed to talk to someone who could help me navigate the trauma. My therapist helped me see that it wasn't my fault. She helped me understand the psychology of a person like Ethan, a person who could compartmentalize their life so completely. He wasn't just a liar. He was living a double life. It was a pathological level of deception. I had to prepare for the fact that this man, this stranger, was going to be the father of my child. He would be in our lives in some capacity forever. That was a terrifying thought, but I knew I had to be the stable one, the honest one. For my baby, I started to focus on practical things. Finding my own apartment, getting ready for the baby. It gave me a sense of purpose. I found a small place near my sister. It was empty, but it was mine. It was a blank slate. Slowly, I started to build a new life, a life that was just for me and my child. I learned more about his other life through the legal proceedings. His wife's name was Sarah. The kids were named Leo and Mia. Seeing their names in legal documents made it all so painfully real. They were real people, a real family that he had betrayed, just as he had betrayed me. I wondered if she knew. Did she have any idea about me? Part of me wanted to reach out to her, to warn her, to connect with the only other person in the world who might understand what this man was capable of. But my lawyer advised against it. She said it would only complicate things legally. So I didn't. I had to focus on my own path. The pregnancy progressed, my belly grew, and with it my resolve grew stronger. Every time I felt the baby kick, it was a reminder of what was real. This baby was real. My love for this baby was real. Everything else was just noise. The legal battle was long and draining. He fought me on everything. He tried to deny paternity at first. He demanded a DNA test. It was just another tactic to hurt me, to delay things. Of course, the test came back and proved he was the father. There was no denying it. The truth was out, at least the legal truth. The emotional truth was something I had to deal with on my own. I had to accept that I had given 5 years of my life to a lie. I had to mourn that loss. But I also had to look forward. I couldn't stay stuck in the past. I started to see a future again. It was different from the one I had imagined. It wasn't the perfect family picture I had wanted, but it was real. And it was mine. I realized that strength isn't about never falling. It's about how you get back up. I was getting back up. For myself and for my child. The day I went into labor, my sister was by my side. It was long and difficult, but through it all, I felt this incredible sense of purpose. And then he was here, my son. The moment they placed him in my arms, the whole world just fell away. All the pain, all the betrayal, all the anger, it just vanished. All I could see was him, this perfect tiny human. I looked at his face and I saw a little bit of me. And a little bit of the man I used to know. But it didn't matter. He wasn't his father. He was his own person. And he was my son. I named him Noah. It means rest and comfort. It was what he brought to me. Those first few weeks were a beautiful, exhausting blur. I was so focused on Noah that I barely had time to think about Ethan. He had requested, through his lawyer, to see the baby. My heart was torn. I didn't want him anywhere near us. But I also knew that legally, I couldn't prevent it. And a part of me, a very small part, knew that Noah deserved to know his father. So I agreed, but on my terms. The first meeting was at my apartment. My sister was there with me. I needed the support. When he walked in, it was the first time I had seen him in months. He looked different, older, tired. The charm was gone. All I could see was the liar. He brought a gift for Noah, a little stuffed animal. It felt like such an empty gesture. He looked at Noah, who was sleeping in his bassinet. I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, regret, sadness, I couldn't tell, and I didn't care. He asked if he could hold him. My entire body tensed up, but I nodded. I watched him as he held his son for the first time. It was a strange out-of-body experience. This was the man who had shattered my world, and he was holding my whole world in his arms. He only stayed for a few minutes. The silence was heavy and awkward. When he left, I felt a profound sense of relief. That became the pattern. Short, supervised visits. He never tried to apologize. He never tried to explain. I think he knew it was pointless. We communicated only through lawyers or brief, sterile text messages about visitation schedules. I learned through the grapevine that his wife had found out. I don't know the details. I don't know if she found out because of my lawyer or if he finally confessed. All I knew was that she had left him. A part of me felt a grim sense of satisfaction, justice, but another part of me felt a deep sadness for her and for their children. Their lives were blown apart too, all because of his selfishness. He had lost everything, both of his families, both of his lives. He was completely alone. A man who had built his world on a foundation of lies and was now left with nothing but the rubble. I sometimes wondered what he thought about when he was alone. Did he regret it? Did he understand the depth of the pain he had caused? I'll probably never know, and I've come to realize that I don't need to. His healing, his remorse, his journey, that's his business. It has nothing to do with me anymore. My journey is about raising my son. It's about building a life for us that's happy and healthy and honest. Noah is 2 years old now. He is bright and funny and full of life. He is the best thing that has ever happened to me. When I look at him, I don't see Ethan's betrayal. I don't see I see my own strength. I see the love that survived the wreckage. I am a different person now than I was before all of this. I'm more cautious. I don't trust as easily. That part of me, the naive, open-hearted girl, is gone forever. But I'm also stronger. I know my own worth. I know I can survive anything. I've learned that you can't build a future on a secret. Love can't grow in the dark. It needs truth and honesty to thrive. My love for Ethan was an illusion. But my love for my son is the most real thing in the world. I chose myself, and I chose my son. And that was the right choice. It was the only choice. Love doesn't survive when the truth arrives too late. But I did. I survived. The world goes silent after a bomb goes off. That's what they say in movies. For me, the silence began the moment I closed the laptop. It was a heavy, suffocating quiet that followed me out of the apartment, down the 3 flights of stairs, and into the anonymous yellow cab. I didn't pack a bag. I took my purse, my phone, and the truth. It was more than I could carry. My sister Jess opened her door without a word. She just took one look at my face, and her expression crumpled with a sympathy so pure it almost broke me. Her apartment became my sanctuary. It was small and smelled like her, like lavender and clean laundry, things that were honest and real. I slept on her sofa for 2 days, buried under a quilt her grandmother had made. I didn't cry. The shock was a shield, a cold, smooth surface that nothing could penetrate. It was all a stage set. Our apartment, the life he had built for us, the future I had been so sure of, just a performance. And I was the audience, the critic, the fool who gave it a standing ovation every single night. On the 3rd day, my phone, which I'd left on silent, lit up the dark living room. Ethan. Then again. Ethan. A text message appeared on the screen. "Melissa, where are you? I came home and you're gone. Call me." I watched the screen glow, my heart a cold, dead stone in my chest. He was playing his part, the worried boyfriend, the confused partner. It was just another scene from the story he'd written, another text. "Are you okay? I'm worried sick. Please." He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about his secret. He was afraid the 2 halves of his life, so carefully separated, were about to collide. He called again and again. The phone buzzed on the coffee table, a frantic, desperate vibration. It was like watching a trapped animal thrashing against the bars of its cage. The mask was slipping. I could feel his panic through the screen, the frantic energy of a liar about to be exposed. I didn't answer. I survived. Jess found me staring at the phone, my hand resting on my still flat stomach, where my son was quietly growing, oblivious. He was the only real thing to come out of the illusion. He was the fact that would burn the whole fake world down. "You need a lawyer," she said, her voice gentle but firm. It was the first practical thing anyone had said, and it cut through the fog. Facts. I needed facts now, not feelings. The lawyer's office was a neutral space of beige walls and muted artwork. It felt safe, impersonal. Her name was Ms. Albright, and she had sharp eyes that saw everything and a voice that promised no nonsense. I told her the story. I used simple words, laying out the events like evidence in a case file. The 5 years, the pregnancy, the laptop, the pictures of Sarah and the 2 children. I didn't cry. It was a report, not a confession. Ms. Albright listened, her pen scratching against a legal pad. She didn't offer condolences. She offered clarity. "First, we establish paternity once the child is born," she said, her tone clinical. "Then we file for child support. We can arrange for a supervised visitation schedule. Given the circumstances of deception, we can argue for limited contact." She spoke of my son as the child, as a legal reality. It was jarring, but it was also grounding. He was my truth. He was the anchor in this storm. "Does his wife know?" Ms. Albright asked, looking up from her notes. The question hung in the air. Sarah. The woman in the photos, smiling on a beach, her arms around my Ethan. Her Ethan. The real Ethan, whoever that was. Did she know she was married to a character? A man playing a role in 2 separate productions at once? "I don't think so," I whispered. "The pictures, they looked happy." Looking back, I see how I'd helped him build his prison of lies, his vague explanations about his past. "It was difficult," he'd say, a shadow passing over his handsome face. I don't like to talk about it. I just assumed he had a difficult childhood. I respected that. I gave him the space to keep his secrets, never guessing that his difficult past was actually a wife and 2 kids in a house in the suburbs. His business trips that lasted for long weekends. The holidays he always had to spend with a sick aunt in another state. It was a script and I had learned all my lines. I asked the right questions and accepted all the wrong answers. I wanted it to be perfect, so I decided it was. That night, back on Jess's sofa, I finally let myself look at the ultrasound picture I kept in my wallet. A tiny, grainy bean shape. Noah. I had already named him. A name that meant rest and comfort. A promise I was making to him and to myself. I put my hand on my belly, a fierce, protective instinct rising in me for the first time. It was an anger that wasn't hot and messy, but cold and sharp. An anger that I could build a new world. My phone buzzed again. A new text from Ethan. "This is insane, Mel. 5 years. You can't just throw away 5 years. Whatever you think you saw, we can talk about it. I love you." The words, "I love you," were the worst lie of all. They were a weapon he had used to keep me in the dark. Love doesn't survive when the truth arrives this late. It's not strong enough. The foundation was a lie, and the whole structure had to come down. I thought about Sarah. Did he send her the same texts? Did he call her from his car before he came home to me, switching from one life to the other with the ease of a man changing his coat? The thought made me feel sick, but it also made me feel free. I wasn't just the victim of a lie. I was the one who had escaped it. Sarah was still trapped inside. Jess came and sat beside me, handing me a cup of tea. She didn't push. She didn't pry. She just sat with me in the quiet, a silent promise that I wasn't alone. I picked up my phone. I scrolled to Ethan's contact. His face smiled back at me from the screen. A picture I had taken on our last vacation. The one he'd said was a much-needed break from work. I now knew it was a week he'd squeezed between his son's birthday and his anniversary with his wife. I didn't delete the picture. I just looked at it. At the face of the stranger I had loved. The man who never really existed at all. Then, with a steady finger, I typed a single message, not to him, but to Ms. Albright. "He's been contacting me. Please handle it." I pressed send, then I blocked his number. It was over. Not the pain, not the grief, but the performance was over. The curtain had come down. In the quiet darkness of my sister's living room, holding the secret of the new life inside me, I knew this was the end of his story, and the beginning of mine. The front door of our apartment clicked shut behind me. The sound was quiet, mundane. It was the same sound I'd heard 1,000 times before, but this time it was an ending. The sound of a lock turning on 5 years of my life. I was on the landing, then I was on the stairs, my hand trailing along the familiar cool metal of the railing. One foot in front of the other. It's strange how the body keeps moving when the mind has shattered into a million pieces. I didn't have a coat. I didn't have a plan. I had my purse, my phone, and truth so heavy it felt like it could drag me through the floor. Outside, the November air was sharp and bit at my skin. The city was moving on around me, cars humming, people walking with purpose, their faces illuminated by shop windows. They were all living in a real world. I had just stepped out of a performance. The life he had built for us, the one I had so lovingly decorated, felt like a stage set I could no longer see. The illusion had vanished. My fingers were clumsy, numb, as I pulled out my phone. I scrolled past his name, Ethan. It looked foreign, the name of a character in a story someone else had written. I found my sister's contact, Jess. She answered on the second ring. "Hey you, what's up?" Her voice was so normal, so anchored in the world I used to belong to just an hour ago. A sob tore its way out of my throat, raw and ugly. It was the first sound I had made since seeing the pictures. "Mel, Melissa, what is it? What's wrong?" Her voice sharpened with immediate concern. "Can I?" I tried to form the words, but they wouldn't come. My breath hitched. "Can I come over?" "Of course, right now." "Where are you?" "I'm outside." "Outside where?" "The apartment." The word felt like a lie. It wasn't my apartment. It was never my apartment. "Okay, I'm 10 minutes away. Don't move. I'm coming to get you." I didn't want her to come. I didn't want her to see me like this, a cliche of a broken woman standing on a sidewalk. I didn't want to have to explain the unexplainable. "No, I'll get a cab. I'll be there soon." "Are you sure? Mel, talk to me." "I can't," I whispered. "Not yet." There was a pause, and I knew she was fighting her instinct to demand answers. "Okay," she said, her voice soft with a kind of pained understanding. "Okay, honey, the door will be unlocked. Just come straight up." We hung up. I stood there for another minute, the phone clutched in my hand as the first text from him arrived. "Ethan, where did you go?" The screen glowed with the fake innocence of it, the question of a man pretending he didn't know he had just detonated a bomb. I stared at the words, feeling nothing but a profound and chilling emptiness. He was still playing the part. He probably didn't even know the performance was over. A cab pulled over and I got in, giving Jess's address. My reflection in the window was a pale, haunted stranger. Jess's apartment was a sanctuary. The moment I stepped inside, I was wrapped in her arms. She didn't say anything. She just held me, her hand stroking my hair as I finally broke. The silent, stoic shock that had carried me out of that building dissolved into violent, racking sobs. It was the grief of a death, the death of a man who never existed, the death of a future that was only ever a story he told me. "It's a lie," I choked out, my face buried in her shoulder. All of it was all a lie. "I know," she whispered, though she couldn't possibly know the scale of it. "I know, it's okay. You're safe here." Safe. The word was a lifeline. He couldn't get to me here. His lies couldn't breathe in this space, which was filled with the honest clutter of my sister's life. Her half-finished paintings leaning against the wall, a stack of books on the coffee table, the scent of the herbal tea she was always drinking. It was real. Everything in her apartment was real. While I sat curled on her worn velvet couch, my phone began to buzz incessantly on the table where I'd dropped it. First texts, then calls. Each buzz was a small electric shock against my frayed nerves. "Ethan, Mel, answer me. I'm getting worried." "Ethan, did something happen? Are you okay?" "Ethan, this isn't funny. Please just tell me where you are." The performance was escalating. He was playing the role of the concerned partner, a character he had perfected over 5 years. I watched the phone vibrate, the screen lighting up with his name, and felt a new emotion beginning to curdle beneath the grief. Anger. It was cold and sharp. He was still trying to manage me, to control the narrative. He was hiding even now. "Do you want me to turn that off?" Jess asked, her eyes full of a pain that mirrored my own. I shook my head. "No. Let it buzz." I wanted the noise. I wanted the proof. Each ignored call, each unanswered text was a small act of defiance. It was the only power I had. I was no longer playing my part in his production. I had walked off the stage. Jess brought me a cup of tea and a thick blanket. She sat beside me, not pushing, just being present. The silence was heavy, but it was a shared silence, not the lonely, suffocating kind I had been living in for weeks. Finally, I spoke. My voice was hoarse. "He has a wife." Jess flinched as if I had struck her. "What?" "A wife. And 2 kids, a boy and a girl." I said the words clinically, like a doctor delivering a diagnosis. The facts. I had to hold onto the facts because the emotions were an ocean threatening to drown me. I saw pictures on his laptop, a whole life I knew nothing about, a real life, with a real family. I didn't have to say what that made me, what that made our home, our plans, our baby. We both knew. Jess's face hardened. The gentle sympathy was replaced by a fierce, protective fury that I was too broken to feel for myself yet. "That son of a bitch," she breathed. "That absolute pathological son of a bitch." Her anger was a shield. It was something I could stand behind. The rest of the night passed in a blur of disjointed images and suffocating thoughts. I didn't sleep. I lay on the pull-out sofa in Jess's living room, staring into the darkness, the movie of his betrayal, playing on a loop in my mind. The photo of him and a smiling blonde woman, a wedding ring clear on his left hand. The photo of him holding a little girl on his shoulders at a pumpkin patch. The photo of him with a baby boy, his face radiating a fatherly pride I had dreamed of one day seeing, directed at our child. He had 2 lives, a real one built on vows and history and truth, and a fake one, a secret one, with me. I was the affair. I was the other woman, the home wrecker who didn't even know there was a home to wreck. I pressed my hands against my stomach, where our baby was sleeping oblivious. This tiny, innocent life, conceived in love, but born of a lie. A wave of nausea washed over me. This baby was the one thing that threatened to connect his two worlds. This baby was the reason the illusion had started to crack. The reason he had become so distant and vague. He wasn't in shock about the pregnancy. He was terrified of being found out. Love doesn't survive when the truth arrives this late. It's not possible. A lie this big doesn't just break a heart. It rewrites your entire past. Every memory I had of him was now tainted. Every loving word a calculated line. Every shared future a fiction he was spinning. I had been in love with a character, a mask. The real man was a stranger, and he was a coward. Sometime before dawn, a new text came through. It was different from the frantic, worried ones. Ethan, we need to talk. I can explain everything. Explain. The word was an insult. There was no explanation. There were only facts. There was a wife named Sarah. I had seen her name in a file caption, and there were children. There was no story he could tell that would erase them. There was no version of the truth where I wasn't the fool. I finally picked up the phone. My thumb hovered over his contact, over the option to block him. It felt so small, so digital, for such a monumental act of severance. The sun was beginning to lighten the sky, casting long gray shadows across the room. I looked around at the safety of my sister's home. I felt the faint, deep-seated ache in my lower back that had become a constant companion in early pregnancy. This wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't about my broken heart or my shattered trust. It was about the child I was carrying. A child who deserved a life built on honesty, not one that started in the wreckage of a man's deception. My child deserved a mother who was a survivor, not a victim. I didn't block his number, not yet. Instead, I opened a new browser window. I typed a single word into the search bar. Lawyer. It was the first step, the first brick in a new life I would have to build from scratch. The performance was over. The grief was a storm inside me. But for the first time since I saw those photographs, I felt a flicker of something other than pain. It was cold, it was hard, and it was utterly clear. It was resolve. Noah is 2 years old now. His world is small and certain. It is the worn-out blue elephant he cannot sleep without. The specific way I have to cut his toast into 4 perfect squares. The sound of my keys in the lock at the end of the day. His world is built on facts. Solid, dependable things he can touch and trust. I have made sure of it. Our apartment is a blank slate. After I left my sister's, I found this place on the other side of the city. It's small, with white walls and big windows that let in the morning sun. It is a space that holds no ghosts. It belongs only to us. There are no secrets hiding in its closets, no lies embedded in its foundation. Everything here is honest, real. Most days, this life feels like a quiet victory, a peace I fought for and won. But today is Sunday. Sunday is the day the illusion returns for a visit. It's the one day a week I have to see him. The court calls it supervised visitation. I call it a performance. The buzzer rang at exactly 10 o'clock. Punctual. He was always punctual. It was part of the character he played. Ethan, the reliable man. I buzzed him in without a word, my hand steady on the intercom button. I watched from the window as he crossed the small courtyard, his shoulders slightly stooped. He looks older now. The charm has worn thin, like cheap plating rubbing off to show the dull metal underneath. Noah, who had been pushing a little wooden train across the rug, looked up at the sound of the knock. He doesn't call him Daddy. He doesn't call him anything yet. To Noah, Ethan is just a man who appears for 2 hours on a Sunday, bringing a toy that is always slightly too old for him and an awkward energy that fills our quiet apartment like smoke. I opened the door. Melissa. He gave a tight, small smile, the kind of smile a person practices in the mirror. Ethan. There was a silence. There is always a silence. It's a space filled with everything we can't say, everything he will never admit. He held out a brightly wrapped box. For Noah. I took it and placed it on the entryway table. We would open it later, or maybe we wouldn't. I make the rules now. He stepped inside, his eyes scanning the apartment. He does this every time, searching for something. A sign of another man, maybe. A hint of a life I'm hiding from him. It's a bitter irony. He, the master of secrets, now suspects them everywhere. He finds nothing. My life is an open book. I have nothing to hide. "He's getting so big," Ethan said, his voice a little too loud. He crouched down, forcing a cheerful tone. "Hey, buddy, look at you." Noah stared at him, his expression blank, before turning back to his train. He pushed it along its imaginary track. Chugga chugga choo choo. The sound was a small, steady rhythm against the strained quiet. Ethan sat on the floor a few feet away, a visitor in a home that could have been his. He tried to engage. He asked about the train. He pointed out the window at a passing bird. It was a painful, hollow imitation of fatherhood. He was playing a part, but Noah, in his perfect childish honesty, wasn't interested in the performance. He was interested in his train. I stayed in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands. I am the supervisor. I am the warden. It's a strange role to play in the wreckage of a life we were supposed to build together. Looking back, I realize his entire life was a series of performances. He was a different character for every audience. For me, he was the devoted partner, the man who'd had a tough, vague childhood and was building a future from scratch. For Sarah, his wife, he was the loving husband and father, the man who had to travel so much for a demanding job. He kept his stories separate, his stages on opposite sides of town. He never imagined the two audiences would one day end up in the same theater, reading from the same terrible script. I often wondered how Sarah found out. For a long time, I didn't know the specifics. My lawyer handled the DNA test and the child support filings. The legal letters went back and forth, cold and clinical. In them, Ethan was no longer a man I had loved. He was the respondent. I was the petitioner. Our son was the child. It was a brutal, necessary stripping away of emotion, leaving only the hard, ugly facts. Then, about a year ago, I got a call from my lawyer. He was updating me on a final settlement detail. He was a kind, older man who always spoke to me with a gentle sort of pity. "It's all settled, Melissa," he'd said. He signed. His wife, well, his ex-wife now, she's the one who pushed it through. "She knows everything?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Oh yes," he replied. "From what I gather, she's the one who dismantled him. He didn't confess. Men like him never do. His story just collapsed." He told me what he'd pieced together from the other side's legal correspondence. Sarah, it turned out, was not a fool. She was a woman who had been given a story and had trusted it just like me. But Ethan's lies got sloppy. The stress of the pregnancy, of my discovery, of the impending legal battle, it made him careless. There were unexplained withdrawals from their joint account, the one I never knew existed. There were credit card statements for hotels near my old apartment, small things, loose threads. The final thread he left dangling was the car. The one he told me was a company car. It was registered in both his and Sarah's names. When the registration renewal came to their house, their real house, she saw it. And then she started pulling. She hired a private investigator. She didn't find a singular dramatic affair. She found a life. She found me. She found 5 years of photos on his social media that he had meticulously blocked her from. She found a whole other existence he had curated and maintained. He hadn't told her. He had never planned to. He was going to try to keep juggling the two worlds, paying me off to keep me quiet, another secret to manage. But Sarah found the truth on her own. And the truth, when it arrives that late, doesn't leave room for negotiation. Love doesn't survive that. She took their kids and left. She filed for divorce and, according to my lawyer, took everything he had spent his life lying to protect. He lost both his families in the space of a month. Not because he came clean, but because his carefully constructed stage set finally came crashing down on top of him. He never chose a truth. The truth chose him. Back in my living room, Ethan's time was almost up. He stood, brushing off his pants. "Well," he said, the forced cheerfulness gone, replaced by unweary resignation. "Good to see you guys." Guys, as if we were a team, as if he were a part of it. "Okay, Noah," I said softly, walking over. "Time to say bye-bye." Noah finally looked at Ethan, then at me. He held up his train. Ethan reached out as if to hug him, but hesitated. He is not allowed to be alone with him, not for a second. The space between his hand and his son's shoulder was an unbridgeable chasm. He let his arm drop. "I'll see you next week, buddy," he said to the top of Noah's head. Then he looked at me, and for a fleeting moment, the mask slipped. I saw something in his eyes. It wasn't remorse. It wasn't regret for the pain he'd caused. It was self-pity, a deep, bottomless well of it. He was mourning his own life, the one he had ruined. He was the victim in his own story. He always would be. I just nodded, my face a blank wall. I would not give him anger. I would not give him tears. I would not give him anything. He had taken enough. I closed the door behind him and locked it. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood, listening as his footsteps faded down the hall. The performance was over. The audience could go home, but we were already home. I turned back to the quiet room. Noah was on the floor, making a soft humming noise as he pushed his train. The sunlight streamed through the window, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. The silence that Ethan left behind was not empty. It was peaceful. It was ours. I sat on the floor beside my son. He didn't look up, completely absorbed in his small, honest world. I put my hand on his back, feeling the warmth of him, the steady rhythm of his breathing. This was the truth, the only one that mattered. The love I thought I had for Ethan was an illusion, a story I had told myself. But this fierce, overwhelming love for the little boy who saved me from that story, this was real. We were real. My world is small now, and I like it that way. It's contained within the four walls of a 2-bedroom apartment that smells like lemon cleaner and baby powder. The living room is filled with primary colored toys, a soft gray couch, and a bookshelf where Dr. Seuss sits beside novels I'll get to someday. There are no secrets in the closets. There are no ghosts in the hallways. Every object in this space is mine, chosen by me. It is a life built on facts, not feelings. Noah is 2 years old now. He has my eyes, but he has Ethan's smile. For a long time, that smile was a difficult thing to see. It was a constant living reminder of the lie. It was the same smile that had convinced me of a future, the one that had been a mask for a different life he was living somewhere else. But now, when Noah's face breaks into that familiar grin, I don't see the illusion anymore. I just see my son. The love I have for him is the truest thing I have ever known. It is real. Today is Saturday, Visitation Day. The center is a depressingly neutral space, painted in a shade of beige that seems designed to absorb all emotion. It's a place for broken things to be handled carefully. There are worn-out toys in a plastic bin, and a supervisor, a kind but tired-looking woman named Carol, who watches everything with a practiced, gentle gaze. The whole setup is a monument to failure. It is the architecture of consequence. Ethan is already there when we arrive. He stands up too quickly, a nervous energy radiating from him that wasn't there when he was playing his other character. The charming, confident man I fell in love with is gone. That man was a performance. This one, the one fidgeting by a child-sized table, feels like the real, hollowed-out person left behind when the stage set was dismantled. "Hey," he says, his voice quiet. He looks at me, then his eyes slide to Noah, who is hiding behind my leg. "Hi, Ethan," I say. My voice is even, it costs me nothing. He kneels down, trying to make himself smaller, less intimidating. "Hey, buddy, look what I brought you." He holds out a bright red toy truck. It's a desperate offering, a prop. Noah peeks out, his little face a mask of suspicion. He doesn't move. His honesty is brutal, the way only a child's can be. There's no history to color his perception, no memory of a 5-year love story. There's only this awkward man, who appears for 1 supervised hour every other week. A stranger who shares his smile. Ethan's own smile falters. "It's for you, Noah. You like trucks." It's true, Noah does like trucks. But Ethan doesn't know that from experience. He knows it because my lawyer told his lawyer, a clinical fact passed between 2 paid professionals. The child shows a preference for vehicular toys. It's not a memory, it's a data point. I give Noah a gentle nudge. "Go on, sweetie. You can go play." He takes a few hesitant steps forward and accepts the truck. But he immediately turns and toddles over to the toy bin, picking up a worn-out plastic dinosaur instead. The new, shiny offering is left on the floor. Ethan remains kneeling for a moment, his hands still outstretched. He looks defeated. I sit on one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs and pull out a book. I don't read it. I watch. I have to. It's part of the arrangement. But I don't watch with the burning anger I once had. The rage has cooled into something else, something quieter. Pity, maybe, or just a profound sense of distance. He tries, I'll give him that. He follows Noah to the bin and tries to engage him with the dinosaur. He makes a half-hearted roar sound. Noah ignores him, utterly absorbed in his own world. Ethan attempts to build a tower with blocks. Noah walks away. The hour ticks by in a series of these failed connections. It's like watching a man try to communicate in a language he doesn't speak. He is trying to perform the role of dad, but he never learned the lines. He was too busy starring in another show. Looking at him now, I find it hard to believe this man orchestrated such a complex, devastating lie. The man who managed 2 families, 2 homes, 2 entire lives, can't even hold the attention of his own son for 5 minutes. Maybe the deception took everything he had. Maybe this empty, exhausted person is all that's left. He isn't a monster anymore, he's just a man. A sad, empty man. I think about Sarah sometimes. His wife. His real wife. My lawyer told me she was the one who ended it. She didn't wait for his confession, a confession that never would have come. She saw the cracks in the story, the financial inconsistencies, the vague excuses. She hired a private investigator. She discovered the truth in cold, hard facts. A report with photographs. Me. Our apartment. I wonder if she ever saw a picture of me and felt the same sickening lurch I did when I saw her face on that laptop screen. We are 2 women bound by the same terrible secret, 2 strangers who shared a life with a man who was, himself, a stranger. Our lawyers spoke. Our worlds collided through paperwork and legal channels, but we have never met. I hope we never do. There's nothing we could possibly say to each other. The damage is a closed circle. When the hour is up, Carol gives me a small, knowing nod. Time to go, Noah, I say, my voice gentle. Noah drops the dinosaur and runs to me, his arms wrapping tightly around my legs. He is ready. He is always ready to leave. This is not his sanctuary. It's just a room we have to visit. Ethan stands up. He's getting so big, he says, a vague statement that means nothing. Yes, he is. There's a long, awkward silence. This is the part I dread, the moment that feels like a ghost of our past. He looks at me, and for a second, I see a flicker of the man I knew, a flash of regret. But it's not for me, not for what he did. It's self-pity, the profound, lonely sadness of a man who built an empire of lies and now has to live in the rubble. Melissa, he starts, but he doesn't finish. He never does. What could he possibly say? I'm sorry, is a language he doesn't know how to speak. The truth is a country he's never visited. I just nod. Bye, Ethan. I take Noah's hand and we walk out. We don't look back. The air outside feels clean. The sun is bright. Back in our apartment, I close the door and the sound of the city fades away. The lock clicks shut, a sound of safety, of certainty. Noah runs to his toy box, pulling out his own trucks and animals, the ones that belong here. I slip off my shoes and join him on the floor, and he immediately crawls into my lap, holding up a blue plastic elephant. Elle, he says, pointing. That's right, baby. An elephant. He rests his head against my chest, his small body warm and real against mine. This is what survived. This is the truth that grew from the wreckage of the lie. Our little world contained in these 4 walls. It's not the life I dreamed of, the one with the perfect husband and the white picket fence. The illusion is gone, but what's left is real. It's small, it's quiet, and it's ours. There are days when the past feels like a movie I once saw, a story about someone else. The emotions are distant, the plot points clinical. Then there are other days when a scent, a turn of phrase, or the angle of the afternoon light can pull it all back into sharp focus. It's not pain anymore, not exactly. It's something quieter, the phantom limb of a life I never truly had. The second Saturday of the month was Visitation Day. It's a phrase that sounds like it belongs in a prison system, and in a way it did. For 2 hours, Ethan was allowed to see his son in a public place, with me present. Our lawyers had arranged it. His had argued for unsupervised time, for overnights, for a chance to build a real relationship. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had seen men like Ethan 100 times before, simply presented the facts. The years of pathological deception, the complete abandonment during my pregnancy, the fact that he was, to Noah, a stranger. The court agreed. The relationship was not real, so it could not yet be treated as such. We met at a public park, one with bright plastic slides and a sandbox Noah loved. It was neutral territory, a place that held no memories for Ethan and me. It was not our apartment, which had been the stage for his greatest performance. It was not my new apartment, the sanctuary I'd built from the rubble. It was just a place, anonymous and safe. I saw him waiting on a bench near the entrance, and the man I saw was not the Ethan I had loved. The illusion was gone. The charm he used to wear like a well-fitted coat was gone, replaced by a cheap, ill-fitting anxiety. His shoulders were slumped. The easy, confident smile I had fallen for was now a tight, uncertain line. He looked tired. He looked small. Noah, holding my hand, paid him no attention. At 2 years old, his world was beautifully simple. It consisted of me, my sister, his favorite blue dinosaur, and the promise of a snack. This man on the bench was just a piece of scenery. "Hey," Ethan said, his voice hesitant. He stood up, trying to force that old smile onto his face. It didn't reach his eyes. It was a mask, and it was cracking. "Ethan," I said, my tone flat. It was the only tone I had for him now, not angry, not sad. Just a statement of fact, his name. He knelt down, trying to meet Noah's eye level. "Hey, buddy, it's Dad." The word sounded foreign and wrong coming from his mouth. Noah hid behind my leg, clutching the denim of my jeans. He peeked out, his expression one of mild curiosity, the same look he gave a pigeon pecking at a stray French fry. He didn't know this man, and he didn't care to. For the next hour, I watched Ethan's performance. It was a new one, a character I'd never seen before, the penitent father. He tried to push Noah on the swing, but Noah squirmed and reached for me. He tried to show him how to build a sandcastle, but Noah just threw the plastic shovel aside and toddled over to a different part of the sandbox. Every attempt to connect was a failure. It was like watching a man try to communicate in a language he didn't speak to a country that didn't want him. Ethan's movements were clumsy, his words hollow. He was following a script for a role he hadn't earned. He was acting like a father, but he wasn't one. I sat on the bench, a book open in my lap, though I never read a word. I just watched. I felt no satisfaction in his failure, no bitter joy. All I felt was a profound and weary pity. This was what was left when the lies were stripped away. Not a monster, not a villain from a movie. Just a weak, hollowed-out man who had built his life on a foundation of sand and was now shocked to find himself sinking. The truth had arrived and it had consumed him. Love doesn't survive when the truth arrives this late. Trust doesn't survive. All that survived was this awkward, court-mandated pantomime in a public park, twice a month. When our time was up, I stood and brushed the sand from Noah's overalls. "Time to go," I said, not to Ethan, but to my son. A flicker of desperation crossed Ethan's face. "Already, it feels like we just got here." "It's been 2 hours," I said. A fact. He looked at Noah, who was already tugging on my hand, ready to leave. Can I get a hug, buddy?" Noah just stared blankly. Ethan's face fell. The performance was over. He was just a man in a park whose son didn't know him. "Okay," he whispered. He turned to me. "I'll see you in 2 weeks." I just nodded and we walked away. I didn't look back. That was our routine. Predictable, empty, safe. I thought that was all my life would be. A quiet, orderly existence built around my son. I had survived. I had found a new kind of peace. But there was one last ghost I had yet to face. It happened a few weeks later, on a Tuesday. I was in the grocery store, Noah babbling happily in the cart as I tried to decide between 2 brands of pasta sauce. It was the most mundane of moments. Real life, simple. "You're Melissa." The voice was quiet, steady. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I froze, my hand hovering over a jar of marinara. I turned slowly. The woman standing there was familiar from the hundreds of photos I had scrolled through on that terrible night. But the photos hadn't done her justice. They had shown a smiling, happy wife on vacation, a character in Ethan's other story. The woman standing in front of me was real. She had tired lines around her eyes, the same ones I saw in my own mirror. She was holding a carton of eggs like it was an anchor. It was Sarah. My heart hammered against my ribs. My first instinct was to grab Noah and run. This was the woman I had unknowingly wronged. The other victim. "Yes," I managed to say. My voice was a thread. Her eyes, a deep, weary brown, drifted from my face down to Noah in the cart. He was chewing on the ear of his stuffed giraffe. A flicker of something, pain, resignation, a grief too deep for words, passed across her face. It was so raw, so honest, that it cut through my fear. "He has your eyes," she said softly. I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry felt like an insult. There were no words for this. We were two women standing in the fluorescent light of a grocery aisle, connected by a lie that had ruined both of our lives. She looked back at me. "It wasn't your fault," she said, and the simple clarity of her words broke something open inside me. I hadn't realized how much I'd been carrying the weight of that, the unintentional guilt. "I hired a private investigator, months before you found out. I knew something was wrong. The stories didn't add up. The business trips, the late nights. The performance was getting sloppy." The performance. She used the same word I did. Of course she did. She had been sitting in the front row of his theater for much longer than I had. "He was so charming," she continued, a bitter, hollow smile touching her lips. "He could sell you a story and make you believe you wrote it yourself. He built 2 entire stage sets, and for a while he was a brilliant actor, but he couldn't keep the curtains closed forever." I finally found my voice. "I believed all of it," I whispered, ashamed. "For 5 years. I believed it for 12, she said. There was no competition in her voice, only a shared, devastating truth. "We're not stupid, Melissa. We were hopeful. We were in love with the character he played. The real man doesn't exist. He's just a collection of secrets and excuses." Noah made a happy noise, oblivious. Sarah looked at him again, and her expression softened. "He's beautiful." "Thank you," I said. We stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the refrigerators filling the space between us. There was no anger here, no blame, just a quiet, somber understanding of 2 survivors meeting on the battlefield after the war was over. We had both lost, but we had also both escaped. "I have to go," she said finally, adjusting her grip on the eggs. "My daughter has a soccer game." Her daughter, his daughter, the girl from the photos. The thought sent a pang through me, not of jealousy, but of a strange shared motherhood. Our children were half-siblings, bound by the blood of a man who was a stranger to all of them. I started, but I didn't know how to finish the sentence. "Good to meet you. I'm so sorry." She understood. "I know," she said. She gave me one last long look, a look of profound, sisterly exhaustion. "You take care of him." Then she turned and walked away, disappearing down the aisle of cereal and breakfast bars. I stood there for a long time, my hand still resting on the pasta sauce. The final piece of the illusion had just crumbled away. She wasn't a rival. She wasn't a faceless victim. She was a woman with tired eyes and a daughter with a soccer game. She was real, and in that moment I felt a new kind of freedom. The story wasn't about his betrayal anymore. It wasn't about the lies or the secrets. I had faced the other side of his deception and found not an enemy, but an ally in grief. We were the 2 women who had loved a ghost. I looked down at Noah, my beautiful, solid, real son. He smiled up at me, his face sticky with drool and giraffe ear. He was my truth. He was my certainty. I put the pasta sauce in the cart and pushed forward. The past was finally completely behind me. There were no more ghosts hiding in the shadows. There was only the quiet, brightly lit path ahead. We were survivors, and we were free. Noah is 2 years old now. His world is small and real, made up of undeniable facts. The scratchy texture of the living room rug. The specific way the afternoon light hits the wall above his crib. The sweet, milky scent of his own hair after a bath. The solid weight of my hand in his. These are the things that are true. I hold on to them. Our apartment is a blank slate. The one I found when I was 6 months pregnant and trying to breathe again. For the first year, its emptiness felt cavernous, a constant reminder of the life that had been hollowed out, but now it's filled. Not with furniture, not really, but with the small, vibrant noises of a toddler's universe, the clatter of wooden blocks, the happy shriek when our cat, a stray I'd adopted, bats at his shoelaces. It's filled with us. It's filled with an honest life. Ethan is a ghost in this life, a recurring appointment on a calendar. The visitations happen every other Saturday for 2 hours at a supervised center downtown. The room is aggressively cheerful, painted in primary colors that feel like a lie. It's a place for broken things to pretend they're whole. I drop Noah off with a woman named Carol, whose smile is kind but professional. I don't stay. My lawyer was firm on that. It was a boundary I needed, not for legal reason, but for my own sanity. I see Ethan in the hallway sometimes. He's a stranger. The charm he once wore like a second skin has peeled away, leaving behind something pale and tired. The easy smile is gone, replaced by a tight, uncertain line. He's lost weight. His clothes, once so impeccably chosen, now seem to hang off him as if they belong to a more confident man. He is a character whose show has closed. He tries to talk to me. "Melissa," he'll say, his voice thin. I just nod. I keep my eyes on Noah, who hides behind my leg, clutching my jeans. Noah doesn't know him. To my son, Ethan is just a quiet, sad man he has to spend 2 hours with before I come back. There is no story connecting them, no shared history, only a biological fact that means nothing to a 2-year-old. Love doesn't survive when the truth arrives this late. It's not a wound that can be stitched up. It's a phantom limb. You feel the ache of what you thought was there, but when you look, you see there was never anything real to hold on to in the first place. I survived. Noah and I survived. That was the victory. I thought that was the end of the story, but it wasn't. The final piece of my freedom came on a Tuesday, a day like any other. It was raining, a soft, persistent drizzle that blurred the city lights. Noah was at daycare, and I'd taken a rare afternoon for myself. I was in a small coffee shop a few neighborhoods over from mine, a place I'd never been before, seeking the anonymous comfort of a crowd. I was nursing a lukewarm latte, staring out the window, thinking about nothing more important than what to make for dinner. It was a moment of simple, quiet peace. The bell over the door chimed. I didn't look up until a woman paused by my small table. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice was steady. I glanced up, ready to say the chair wasn't taken, and then my breath caught in my throat. I knew her. I knew her from hundreds of photos. The family vacations, the birthday parties, the life he had lived when he wasn't living his life with me. It was Sarah. Her hair was shorter than in the pictures. She had faint lines around her eyes that weren't there in the smiling photos on Ethan's laptop. She looked tired, but strong, like a ship that had been through a storm and refused to sink. My entire body went cold. This was it. The confrontation I had secretly dreaded for 2 years. I braced myself for the anger, the accusation, for her to finally give a voice to the word that had haunted me in my darkest moments. Homewrecker. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. She gave a small, sad smile. It didn't reach her eyes. "You're Melissa," she said. It wasn't a question. I could only nod, my throat tight. She looked at me for a long moment, and in her gaze I saw not hatred, but a flicker of something else. Recognition, a weary, shared understanding. "I'm not here to yell," she said quietly, as if reading my mind. I saw you through the window. I had to." She gestured to the empty chair. "May I?" Numbly, I nodded again. She sat down, placing her hands on the table. They were bare, no wedding ring, of course. We sat in silence. The sounds of the coffee shop, the hiss of the espresso machine, the low murmur of conversations, felt a world away. It was just us, 2 women on opposite sides of a lie, suspended in a moment of impossible truth. "He destroyed everything," she said, her voice low and flat. It was a statement of fact, like saying the sky was gray. My life, the kids' lives, his own. She finally looked at me directly. "Your life." I swallowed, finding my voice. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. The words felt small, impossibly inadequate. She shook her head, a quick dismissive gesture. "Don't be. It wasn't your fault. I hired a private investigator about a month before it all came out. I knew something was wrong. The vagueness, the business trips that didn't add up. It was like living with a ghost. A ghost, a character, a performance. It was like she was pulling the thoughts directly from my head. I thought I was going crazy," I admitted, the confession slipping out. I kept making excuses for him. The secrets, the way he kept his life so compartmentalized. I just assumed that you were the only one, she finished for me. "I know. He was good at that. He made you feel like the center of his world, didn't he?" The question was so perceptive, so painfully accurate. The tears pricked my eyes. I nodded. "He was an actor," Sarah said, her voice hardening with a cold clarity that I recognized in myself. "A brilliant one. He had a role he played for me and the kids, and he had a role he played for you. The man we thought we loved, he wasn't real. He never existed. It was just a story he told." Her words landed like stones, building not a wall between us, but a foundation. The shame I had carried, the quiet, lingering guilt, that maybe I should have known, that maybe I was somehow complicit in the destruction of her family, it all began to dissolve. She saw it. She saw the same illusion I did. We had both been in the audience for the same fake show. When I found out about you, she continued, her gaze unwavering, my first thought was rage, but then I saw your photo, and I saw the same look in your eyes that used to be in mine, and I realized he had just sold you the same lie he sold me. It was over. That one conversation with the one person on earth I thought would hate me forever was the final act. She didn't absolve me of anything because there was nothing to absolve. She simply confirmed the truth. We weren't rivals. We were survivors of the same shipwreck, left to build new lives from the wreckage, while the man who sunk the ship drifted alone in the wreckage. I hope you and your son are okay, she said, her voice softening. She stood up, her brief moment of connection complete. We are, I said, and for the first time the words felt completely, unshakably true. We are. She gave me one last, long look, a look that held a universe of shared and unsaid things. Then she turned and walked out of the coffee shop, disappearing back into the rain. I sat there for a long time after she left. I didn't cry. I felt strangely calm, emptied of the last vestiges of Ethan's poison. He was no longer a man who had betrayed me. He was a fiction, a character in a book I had finished reading and placed back on the shelf. Sarah had given me a gift I didn't even know I needed. She took the ghost of the woman I had wronged and replaced her with a real person, a fellow survivor. She had set me free. When I picked up Noah from daycare that afternoon, I held him a little tighter. He squirmed in my arms, babbling about his day, his small hand patting my cheek. His touch was real. His love was a fact. That night, as I tucked him into his crib, I looked around our little apartment. It was no longer a blank slate. It was a home. It was the truth, and it was all ours. The silence in our new apartment is different. It isn't the heavy, anxious silence that filled the spaces Ethan left behind in our old life. It's not the empty silence of a hotel room, a neutral space where I was just waiting for the next bad thing to happen. This silence is soft. It's the gentle hum of the refrigerator, the whisper of traffic 2 stories below, the sound of my own breathing. It is the sound of peace. Noah is 2 years old now. He's asleep in his little bedroom, the one I painted the color of a pale blue sky. His small chest rises and falls in a steady, perfect rhythm. I often find myself just watching him breathe. It's a miracle, the simple fact of him. He is the most real thing in my life. Our life is built on small, honest moments. The warmth of his hand in mine as we walk to the park. The mess he makes with his spaghetti, sauce smeared across his cheeks like war paint. The way he says mama, a word that anchors me to the world. These moments are the facts. They are the truth. After living inside a story for so long, I find all my comfort in facts. The meeting with Sarah happened 6 months ago. It was a chance encounter at a coffee shop halfway between her town and my city, a place neither of us should have been. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. The woman in the photos on Ethan's laptop was always smiling, part of a perfect family portrait, a character in his play. The woman standing in front of me was tired, but her eyes were sharp. They held a clarity that I recognized. It was the same clarity I now saw in my own reflection. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. "You're Melissa," she said. It wasn't a question. "You're Sarah," I replied. We stood there for a long moment, 2 strangers connected by a lie. There was no anger between us. The anger was for him, a man who was now just a ghost in both our lives. I saw in her face the same exhaustion, the same grief, and the same hard-won strength I felt in myself. We were 2 sides of the same coin, spun by the same careless hand. "Your son, Noah," she said, her voice quiet. "Is he well?" "He's wonderful," I told her, and my voice didn't break. It was another fact. She gave a small, sad nod. "I'm glad." And that was it. We didn't exchange numbers. We didn't promise to keep in touch. We just acknowledged the truth, and in doing so, we set each other free. Her existence was no longer a secret haunting me. It was a reality I could face. I wasn't the other woman. I was just a woman he had lied to. The same as her. Looking back, that moment was the final lock turning. It was the end of the story Ethan wrote. Now I could start my own. Ethan still has his supervised visitations. Once a month, a tired-looking woman from social services sits in the corner of a sterile, toy-filled room while Ethan tries to be a father for an hour. I used to dread those days. I used to feel a knot of acid in my stomach, watching him walk toward the community center. But now, I just feel a profound and distant pity. He has aged. The charming, easy smile he wore like a well-fitted suit is gone. Now he just looks empty. He is a man hollowed out by his own deceptions. The performance is over and he doesn't know what to do without a script. He brings Noah a toy each time, a plastic truck, a set of blocks. He holds them out with an awkwardness that is painful to watch. He is a stranger offering a gift. Noah, in his innocent wisdom, treats him like one. He'll take the toy and then immediately toddle over to the worn-out picture books in the corner, more interested in them than in the man trying to buy his affection. Ethan tries. He gets on the floor, his knees cracking. "Noah," he'll say. "Look, vroom vroom." But his heart isn't in it. It's just a line. He is still playing a character, the penitent father, but the role doesn't fit. Noah doesn't look at him. He doesn't know the part he's supposed to play in this scene. To Noah, I am the sun and the moon. This man is just a shadow that passes through once a month. I watch them through the observation window, and I don't feel anger anymore. I just see the wreckage. Love doesn't survive when the truth arrives this late. It can't. The foundation is sand. All he is to me now is a biological fact, a name on a birth certificate, a man who sends a check every month because a judge told him to. There is one question that still lingers in the quiet moments, usually late at night after Noah is asleep. It's the one part of the wreckage I haven't figured out how to clear away. Leo and Mia, his other children, Noah's brother and sister. In my new apartment, the one I chose and paid for myself, there are no pictures of Ethan. There is no trace of the life we were supposed to have. It is a blank slate. But sometimes I think about the hundreds of photos I saw on that laptop. A little boy with Ethan's dark hair and a little girl with a gap-toothed smile. They are real. They are out there, living a life that was also fractured by their father's lies. What do I do with that? What do I tell Noah? It's a problem for another day, I tell myself. He's too young to understand the complexities of a family tree poisoned at the root. For now, his world is simple. It's me, it's my sister, it's his grandparents. It is a world built on real, tangible love. But one day he will be old enough. He will ask questions. He will see other kids with their fathers, with their siblings, and he will wonder. And I will have to give him the truth. Because that is the one thing I can promise him. No more lies, no more secrets. I think about Sarah. I wonder if she thinks about Noah. I wonder if she looks at her children and feels a pang of sorrow for the brother they will never know. Maybe she does. Maybe she too shoves it into a box labeled "for later." We are both just mothers trying to protect our children from a man who was supposed to protect them. Last week, during the visitation, Ethan looked up at me through the glass. His eyes were pleading. It was the first time he had made eye contact with me in months. For a second, I saw a flicker of the man I thought I loved. The vulnerable, charming boy who told me he'd never met anyone like me. It was just a flicker, a ghost of a memory. Then it was gone. He was just Ethan again. A sad man in a cheap sweater, sitting alone on the floor of a brightly lit room while my son played happily by himself. I didn't look away. I just held his gaze, my expression calm. There was nothing left to say. There was no illusion left to break. He was the one who looked away first. I picked Noah up at the end of the hour. He was fussy and tired, reaching for me with his chubby arms. I buckled him into his car seat and he was asleep before we even left the parking lot. Driving home, I glanced at him in the rearview mirror, his mouth slightly open, his face peaceful. In him, I see nothing of Ethan's deception. I see only a future, an honest one. Our apartment was warm when we got back. I carried him inside, his small body heavy and warm against my shoulder. I laid him in his crib and pulled the blanket up to his chin. I stood there for a long time, just watching him. The silence of our home wrapping around us like a promise. It was over, the grief, the shock, the anger. They were all just chapters in a story that had ended. This is the epilogue. And it is quiet. It is simple. It is real. The world feels different after you've spoken to the other woman. Not easier, not harder, just clearer. The air in my new apartment, the one that was just mine and Noah's, seemed to lose its static charge. The meeting with Sarah hadn't been a confrontation. It had been a quiet confirmation. It was the final, stray puzzle piece clicking into place. We were not rivals. We were two women who had stood on opposite sides of the same flimsy stage set, believing the actor at its center was real. It was a gift, that conversation. An unexpected absolution from a guilt I didn't even realize I was carrying. The guilt of the other woman, the homewrecker. It's a role society hands you even when you didn't know you were auditioning. Sarah took that role away from me. She saw me not as a villain in her story, but as a fellow victim in Ethan's. And with that clarity came a new pressing question. It was a question that had been hovering in the background, a low hum beneath the daily noise of motherhood. Now it was loud. Noah, my son, was 3 now, a whirlwind of bright energy, mismatched socks, and endless questions. His world was small and safe. It was me, it was my sister Jess, it was his daycare friends. And once a month it was a quiet, awkward hour in a sterile visitation room with a man he knew only as Ethan. Those visits were a performance. Ethan would arrive, his face a mask of strained pleasantness. The charm he once wielded like a weapon was gone, replaced by a hollow, tired script. He'd bring a toy that was always slightly too old or too young for Noah. He'd ask questions with no follow-up. "Do you like preschool?" he'd ask, and before Noah could string together a sentence about finger painting, Ethan's eyes would drift toward the clock on the wall. Noah was mostly indifferent to him. He was a stranger who appeared and disappeared. He was not daddy. That word didn't exist in Noah's vocabulary. He had never asked, but I knew he would. Children search for patterns. They look for order. Boy, girl, mom, dad, sun, moon. My son would soon notice the missing piece in his own small universe. He would see the fathers picking up other kids from daycare. He would see the family pictures on his friends' refrigerators, and he would turn to me. And I would have to give him an answer. What would I say? The truth. It was the only answer I had. It was the foundation of this new life I was building, brick by painful brick. No more secrets, no more lies. My son would live in the real world, not an illusion. But how do you tell a child that his life began with a secret? How do you explain a father who is a ghost? A man who built a life with you while he had another one tucked away? How do you tell him about the other life? The one with a different mother, a different house, and 2 other children. His siblings, Leo and Mia. I knew their names from the photos. I knew their faces. I saw them sometimes when I looked at Noah. A certain curve of his ear that matched the little girl's. The serious set of his brow when he was concentrating, so like the boy in the soccer uniform. They were real. They were his blood. And they had no idea he existed. That was the part that kept me up at night. The splinter of truth that was still lodged deep in my heart. Ethan's lie hadn't just shattered my life. It had created a schism, cleaving a family that should have been connected. He had stolen their shared history before it even had a chance to begin. I survived. I knew with a certainty that ran bone deep that I would always be okay. But this wasn't about me anymore. It was about a little boy who deserved a story that made sense. A story that was honest, even if it was painful. The moment I had been dreading arrived on a Tuesday. I picked Noah up from his friend Maya's house. As I was helping him with his coat, my eyes landed on the family portrait hanging in their entryway. A smiling mom, a smiling dad, Maya and her little brother perched on their laps. A perfect, happy square. Noah followed my gaze. He pointed a chubby finger. "Maya's daddy," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a simple observation, a fact. Then he looked at me, his head tilted. "Where's my daddy?" There it was, the question. So simple, so innocent. I froze for only a second. I had practiced this. I had rehearsed 100 different answers in my head, but they all felt like a performance. A story. I was so tired of stories. I knelt down to his level, my hands on his small shoulders. "That's a really good question, sweetie," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Your daddy's name is Ethan. He doesn't live with us." He just blinked, accepting this information with the matter-of-factness of a 3-year-old. For him, it was enough, for now, but I knew it was just the first sentence of a very long, very complicated book. A book I had to figure out how to write. That night, after Noah was asleep, I sat on my sofa in the dark. The blue glow of my phone, the only light. I scrolled through pictures of him. Noah laughing in a pile of autumn leaves. Noah with chocolate smeared all over his face. Noah sleeping, his small hand curled around his stuffed bear. My beautiful real boy. He deserved more than a father who was a ghost and a family history that was a void. A notification pinged at the top of my screen. An email. The sender's name made my breath catch in my throat. Sarah Collins. My heart hammered against my ribs. We hadn't spoken since that day at the coffee shop months ago. I thought that was the end of it, a single moment of shared understanding before we retreated back into our separate lives. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. It's hard to unlearn fear. For years, her name had been a symbol of the lie that destroyed me. Seeing it now still felt dangerous, but I wasn't that person anymore. I was a mother with a question to answer. I opened it. The email was short, direct, and just as clear-eyed as she had been in person. Melissa. I hope this isn't an intrusion. I've been thinking a lot since we spoke. I've been thinking about the kids, all of them. Leo is asking questions. He's older, he understands more. He knows his father doesn't live with us anymore because of a big secret. He deserves to know the whole truth, or as much of it as he can handle. So does Mia. And I imagine someday, your son will too. I don't know what the right thing to do is. I don't think there's a rule book for this. But hiding them from each other feels like continuing Ethan's lie. They are siblings. That is a fact. It's the only real thing to come out of all of this. I have an idea, and please feel free to say no. What if we started with pictures? We could make them each a small photo album. A book about their family, the whole family. We could write simple, honest words. This is your brother Noah. He lives with his mommy Melissa. These are your sister and brother Mia and Leo. They live with their mommy Sarah. No meetings, no pressure. Just the truth in a way they can see and hold, just so they know the other exists. Let me know what you think. Sarah. I read the email 3 times. My vision blurred with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness or anger. It was relief, a profound, soul-deep relief. Here was a woman I should have hated, a woman whose existence had once torn my world apart, offering me a bridge. She wasn't just thinking of her children, she was thinking of mine. She was looking at the wreckage Ethan had left behind and was trying to build something honest from it. She was doing what he never could, facing the truth and trying to do right by it. Hiding them from each other feels like continuing Ethan's lie. That was it. That was the core of it all. Keeping Noah from his siblings wasn't protecting him. It was perpetuating the very deception I was trying to escape. It was making his family a secret. My son's life would not be a secret. I typed my reply, my fingers flying across the screen. Sarah. Yes, I think that's a wonderful idea, thank you. I hit send before I could second guess it. A week later, a package arrived. Inside was a small, simple photo album. On the first page was a picture of a smiling woman with kind eyes, Sarah. The next page held a photo of a dark-haired boy with a gap-toothed grin, kicking a soccer ball. This is Leo. He is your big brother. The page after that showed a little girl with bright, curious eyes holding a cat. This is Mia. She is your big sister. I sat on the floor of my living room, the book open in my lap, and I cried. I cried for the years lost, for the family that could have been, but I also cried with a strange, fierce hope. That weekend, I printed my own photos, a picture of me, and dozens of Noah. Noah on the swings. Noah covered in mud. Noah in his superhero pajamas. I bought an identical album and carefully slid the photos in. This is Noah. He is your little brother. It wasn't the story I ever would have written. It wasn't the family I had dreamed of. The life Ethan had built for us was a stage set, and it had been torn down. But this was real. This was a new story. Our story. Written not by a liar in the shadows, but by 2 mothers in the clear light of day. It was a